Welcome, everybody. All right, today we're talking about deeper human connections. We'll start by talking about love. Love's one of the most profound emotions known to any human being. And there's a whole lot of kinds of love. There's a whole lot of variations. Many people seek its expression in a romantic relationship with a compatible partner or partners. And for these people, romantic relationships compromise one of the most meaningful aspects of life and are a source of deep fulfillment. However, oftentimes I will ask in counseling, marriage counseling, do you feel your partner really knows you or knows all of you? And the answer oftentimes is no. And these are people that are married, that have been together for years. But what happens is resentment gets in the way. While the need for human connection appears to be innate, the ability to form healthy, loving relationships is learned. And there's evidence that suggests that the ability to form a stable relationship starts to form in infancy. Yes, it's how safe does your baby feel with you as a parent? Are you aware of their needs? Do you understand how to interpret their cry? Do you do everything based on how you want to do it, or do you do everything based on what the baby needs? And how you interact with the baby and their needs and interpret their cries and their various behaviors dictates how close they can feel to you. And oftentimes, their attachment with life and with human beings is formed within that first year. With a caregiver who reliably meets an infant's needs for food, care, warmth, protection, stimulation, and social contact, you're going to see that that kid is fairly socially connected, fairly well connected. And those relationships are not just destiny, but they are theorized to establish deeply ingrained patterns of relating to others. The end of a relationship, however, is often a source of great psychological anguish. It's in our fast-paced, hectic lives, how often do we take the time to reflect on our relationships? And that is what we need to do. What it means to be in relation to another human being, how our relationships are serving us or not serving us, how are we showing up as an active participant in the creation of healthy mutual relationships. And so what we're talking about is the word called reciprocity, where I give to you, you give back to me, and we share a relationship because we interact with each other and give to each other. A relationship is a connection or a bond between two or more people characterized by all kinds of forms of interaction, shared experiences, emotional attachments. Relationships can take a whole lot of different forms, from friendships, romantic partnerships, family connections, professional, collaborations, and a whole lot more. And these connections play a significant role in shaping our psychological and emotional well-being. Relationships are a key feature of what it means to be human. And we are beings hardwired for social connection and belonging. And when our relationships are strong, we're more resilient in the face of stress and hardships. But when our relationships are fraught with stress, we are more likely to experience anxiety, depression, maladaptive coping behaviors like addiction, which can impact our mental and physical health. Relationships really are a key feature in our life. And there's a recent study published in the Journal of Social and Psychological Personality Science, and it found that positive and negative experiences in our relationships are directly linked to our physiological indicators like blood pressure, heart rate, reactivity. And in that research, they also found that in general, people who reported positive relationship experiences are more likely to have lower blood pressure. Conversely, those who reported negative experiences, including relationships with extreme highs and lows, were predictive of higher blood pressure. So, yeah, who you pick as a partner and who you're in a relationship can really affect your health. And simply put, the quality of our relationships can have a real impact on our health. And what you want to think about is, what is the psychology of attraction? It's a complex, multifaceted area that seeks to understand why people are drawn to one another. And it encompasses a wide range of conscious and subconscious factors that influence who we find attractive and why. And these things that influence attraction include a whole lot of things, like number one, physical appearance. Our preferences tend to be shaped by our culture and our personal tastes. Similarity. People are often attracted to others with similar interests, values, beliefs, backgrounds. Reciprocity, the word I used earlier. We tend to be attracted to people who show interest in us, reciprocate our affections. Also, the law of attraction includes social influence. Social factors like societal norms, cultural expectations influence who we find attractive. Social beauty standards, for example, can shape our perceptions and attractiveness. Also, strangely, our early caregivers, we unconsciously expect our romantic partners to act as our parents did, and we tend to recreate the relationship patterns we experienced in childhood. And then there's this weird thing called the evolutionary factors. And evolutionary psychology suggests that some aspects of attraction may be rooted in our evolutionary history. Like, are you strong? Do you make me feel safe? Are you a protector? Are you a caregiver? Are you loving? Are you passionate? Are you compassionate? These are things that are huge parts of our attractiveness. What is your body shape? How do you use your body? How do you walk? What is your attitude as you go through life? How well do you connect with other people? Regardless of initial attraction being formed, attraction alone does not necessarily predict the success of longevity in a relationship. Long-term compatibility involves additional factors beyond our initial attraction. Here's the strange thing. In the honeymoon phase, if you picked me, all of a sudden, I'm going to look at you in a different light because you picked me. What that means is I'm going to find you, because you picked me, more attractive. I am going to find ways to find you sexy, even if you are an ogre, even if you're like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. If you picked me, that is a very attractive feature. So being pursued is very strange for many people. Now, there are unattractive people that we just can't find any way to make them attractive that pursue us. But the bottom line is, just the idea that someone pursues you and wants you and is attracted to you is chemically causes the receiver's brain to make that other person attractive in some way. There's also attachment theory, and that describes the various ways people form emotional bonds and attachments with others, particularly in the context of how we are influenced by our early relationship, like those between the infant and the caregiver. Four main attachment styles have been identified based on how people relate to others in close relationships. Number one is called secure attachment. Now, people with secure attachment style tend to be comfortable with intimacy and are generally able to trust and rely on their partners. People with secure attachment styles often have a history of consistent and responsive caregiving during their early years. Wow. Anxious, preoccupied attachment. People with anxious, preoccupied attachment tend to have a negative view of themselves, but a positive view of other people. They tend to desire close relationships and intimacy, but become overly concerned when abandonment or rejection are brought up. And this attachment style may be associated with inconsistent caregiving during childhood. However, it's important to note the complexity of this. While family dynamics may influence the attachment style, it can also be influenced by temperament and other biological factors. So if you're going to be with somebody who abandons you or leaves you, and you have a big problem with that, there's a good chance that when you were raised in your very early childhood, whoever parented you kind of sucked. Then there's dismissive avoidant attachment. People with dismissive avoidant attachment style tend to have a positive view of themselves but a negative view of other people. They value their independence, their self sufficiency, but they have difficulty relying and opening up to other people. This attachment style develops in response to caregivers who are emotionally unavailable. And a lot of people that come from a European, Eastern European background are very emotionally detached people. They don't show their emotions very much. They don't show it in a family. They're very stoic, and therefore their children become very dismissive, avoidant as far as attachment. Then they get married to somebody who's a little more socially engaged, and that person finds their marriage to be empty because the turd just sits there and doesn't ever say anything, doesn't ever do anything, doesn't have an emotion, doesn't understand emotion, doesn't even want to deal with conflict, doesn't want to speak, doesn't want to connect. These people are crazy makers. Then there's called the fearful avoidant or the disorganized attachment. This style is characterized by negative view of both the self and others. People with a fearful avoidant attachment style have a history of traumatic or abusive caregiving experiences. They may simultaneously desire close relationships and fear the potential that the emotional pain associated with it. So they want to be close, but then they're afraid of the pain. So they never allow people to get close to them. And as a result, they can display conflicting behaviors, like alternating between seeking intimacy and pushing other people away. These people oftentimes find themselves in very transactional relationships or very highly volatile, emotional, argumentative relationships because you can never get close to them, but they find themselves getting close to prostitutes and anybody that has a peripheral role in their life. So it's important to know that attachment styles are not static or permanent. They can evolve and they can also change over time as people gain new experiences and insights. Attachment styles may also evolve with the help of attachment theory. So, utilizing that as a therapeutic technique can be very helpful with people that struggle with attachment. But it's normal for relationships to have ups and downs. However, just as plants need water and sunlight to thrive, our relationships need consistent investment and care from us and those that we're in a relationship with to flourish. Effective communication is the biggest way to form a deeper relationship. How we approach a conversation can make all the difference. Be honest, open, and respectful. But here's the deal. People get defensive. People do not like criticism. People do not like to get feedback because their ego just can't take it. So the deal is, if you're going to be in a relationship, you need to care about another person's perception of you. And if they think you're a total asshole, maybe it's time you go, I can understand how you see me like that. I can see how you could feel like that. I understand why you would feel like that. Wouldn't it be nice, instead of needing to agree or disagree with them, that you validate a person's perception? Because if you're willing to do that, and willing to receive feedback and willing to understand that other people see you differently than you see yourself, instead of trying to convince them that who you think you are is the person you want them to think you are, instead of trying to do a sales job, why don't you just shut the hell up and validate their perception? That might make a deeper relationship. But God forbid a human being do that, because we want everybody to see us exactly the way we see us. We just cannot take any input that is unacceptable to us and doesn't match up with our image of who we are. We have to tell you who we are all day long, every day of our lives, because we're idiots. But if you want a deeper relationship, you have to be willing to connect. And the other way you want to connect to another human being in a deeper relationship, and this is very hard for many people, and I could tell you it sounds really easy, but it's not, and that is to have a feelings discussion and do it every day. Make an appointment to do it every day. It doesn't have to be like an hour-long discussion. It could be 10 minutes. But the discussion is not how was your day, who'd you talk to, what did you do? It is how do you feel about this? How do you feel about that? How do you feel about dinner? How do you feel about this as a movie? How do you feel about what we talked about yesterday? How do you feel about the kid's teacher? How do you feel about, the world in general? How do you feel about that piece of news that we just watched? How do you feel about the politics? However, how you feel in a relationship and listening to how you feel is so much more important than any of these fact-based analytical discussions. If you want to have a deeper relationship, be willing to hear feelings, talk about feelings, and ask about feelings. Now, for men, they find that very hard, especially old stoic turds from the Pacific Northwest. But if you're a human being and you want deeper connections, you have to be willing to dive into feelings. How we approach a conversation makes a difference. Practice active listening, seeking to understand, and not just to be understood. That means you're trying to validate how a person thinks, what a person thinks, how a person perceives things. This is a very important part of communication. If you have no curiosity to understand where another person comes from, you're not going to have deep relationships. If you are not willing to ask questions to understand another person, not to challenge them, not to argue with them, not to have a conflict with them, not to debate them, but to understand them, you are learning how to connect as a human being. These idiots that sit around saying, well, I just like to have conflict, or I just like to debate, or I want to challenge people on what, then you're an asshole when it comes to being a deeper relationship. Nobody wants to sit around listening to you try to be right about your stupid ideas. What they want is a human being willing to understand who they are. And if you do that to them, maybe they will do that back to you. That's called a nice person. Put in effort. Good relationships are built. They're not found. They don't, drop themselves on the hood of your car and beg you to take them with you. You've got to work for relationships. That means you've got to actually be able to observe something about another human being and go, hey, I really like your taste. Hey, I noticed this about you. I noticed you said this the other day, and I thought that was a very insightful comment. That is a way you initiate connection with another human being. And then there's this weird thing called conflict resolution. If you focus on the issue and not the person, you avoid personal attacks and maintain and expect respectful discourse. So what that means is you're talking about the issue. You're not talking about the person. You're not criticizing the person. You're actually trying to understand. Also, if you take the space you need, don't force a conversation in a heated moment. Take a time out, take a time back, and be an adult. People that do conflict well stay flat and stay straight. That means they stay flat in their tone and they stay straight in their delivery. They're very simple. They focus on the ideas. Okay, so what you're telling me is this. Okay, so from what I understand, this is where you're saying. Okay, now what I believe is this. So I can see how huge of a difference we have in this. So, what you have to determine in a relationship when you're trying to develop meaningful dialogue is what this topic means to you emotionally and what it means to them emotionally. That's called meaning. That is the first thing you have to understand when you are discussing something with another human being is what the meaning is to that other person on the topic that they're talking about. And not only the meaning, their interpretation of what's important in that topic. So if you're disciplining a child, one may be more worried about the relationship with the child, and the other one may be worried that they'll never learn anything if we're too soft. So what you have to do is you may be arguing about how to discipline, and one may be like, no, you're going to hurt our child, blah, blah, blah. And the other one's like, well, you're just worried about being their best friend. That means you're arguing about two different things. You have to clarify that. That's called diplomacy, folks. That's a very important part of life. You need to learn it because before you argue about something, you need to discover what the argument means to the other person if you want to have a deeper relationship. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come right back and talk more about deeper connections. So come back. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about deeper human connections. Now, there's this weird thing called empathy. Many people mistake it for sympathy. So if you're around a whiner is going to suck the soul straight out of your body because they're a whiner. What they want is sympathy. They want you to sit there and whine with them. But they don't want to solve anything. They don't want to fix it. They just want to whine about it. And that's called venting. So venting means I'm not going to solve it. I'm just here to listen. Now that's about 94% of all marital communication is venting. That means the willingness to hear your partner through their emotions without taking it personal. That's your job. But you got to be mature to do that. And God forbid you be mature because in this life, we don't think accountability is important at all in this world. We'd rather gaslight the hell out of our partner and be a narcissist. But if you want to be a mature married human being in a relationship with another human being, you want to offer a thing called empathy. Now, empathy is like this. A person jumps off the cliff. I stand up at the top and I go, wow, that sucks for you. You fell down the cliff. You jumped off. I bet you're hurting. Do you want me to throw you a rope? Do you want me to seek help? Or maybe, what can I do to help you? Now that is empathy. You don't join the problem with empathy. You offer a different way out. You offer a different perspective. You offer help, but you don't solve it. You're just there to help. Sympathy means I am willing to solve your problem. Well, that is impossible because you're never going to meet another person's needs completely like that. So you want to build that empathy muscle, being a firefighter or a cop, showing up on the scene. It's not my problem, but I do need to be here with you. You also have to have curiosity for other person's experiences and perspectives. That's got to hurt. I bet that was a really incredible experience you went through. I can imagine how difficult that was. That's called empathy, where you put yourself in another person's shoes. You also want to invest in your own personal growth. If there's barriers preventing you from showing up fully in your relationships, you want to address them. You've got all these people that are fear-based. They live in their heads. They're catastrophizing all day long and hypothesizing fear and what's going to happen. And they narrow their life down to barely the ability to even get out of their house and go to work. People that are fear-based are live in such a tight funnel of life that they're just coping with life. And to live with somebody as a human being in a relationship like that is very, very difficult. If you want a deeper connection, fear-based people are not deep people. They're worthless as can be. They're nice people. They're constructive. They're living life. They can probably do things like be doctors and dentists and do nice things for people, but they're not alive. They're dead. They're existing. That's great, but that's not going to be the person you want to target for a deeper connection. The people for a deeper connection are going to be the people that are willing to discuss emotions, are mature enough to hear your perspective, to be willing to listen, because the listener is the most powerful person in a conversation. They're in charge of the conversation. If you become a great listener, you become one of the most powerful people in the world. But you have to be willing to listen. That's what people need. They need to hear what's in their head. That's how they write their own ship. You also have to set healthy boundaries. Boundaries are deeply personal, but they're essential components of a relationship. And now many people see yes and no as boundaries. Boundaries is more like this. Here's what I can do, and here's what I can't do. That means you have buy-in. That means you have empathy. And if you're a parent, you need to do that all day long, every day of your life. If you're in a relationship, in a marriage, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do. Now, it may mean that the can't do is a huge list of can'ts, and the can is a very limited, but that's how you draw boundaries, and that's how you respect yourself. The health of our relationships is a key indicator to our overall mental and physical health. Investing in our relationships is one of the most important things we can do for ourselves and our partners, our families, our friends, our communities. Professional therapy is a very strong way we can get the support we need to have relationships that we deserve. But here's the other part of it. You cannot have a real deep relationship without commitment. Here's the deal. A lot of people will get married, and half the time they're thinking about what it'll be like to be without you, what it'd be like to be in that scene of pornography that you're staring at all day long. What it would be like to be with this other person. And then the other part of them is with you, enjoying themselves, having a wonderful dinner, having a great conversation, having a vacation, being at the ball game with the kids, and you're thinking about, oh, what a great relationship we have. That's how people are. They're half in and half out. And if you're going to be half in and half out, you're just trying to be in a friendship. You're trying to be in a relationship, but you're not really in a relationship. As a matter of fact, you're about worthless as tits on a boar hog. If you want to be in a real relationship, you have to be committed fully. You're either all in or you're all out. It's not a try. That's why marriage is a covenant. It's either I will be married or I won't be married. And if you want your marriage to be easy and to go well and to be peaceful, you need to will be married. And that means that we are going to solve all of our problems because we are committed to each other. It's these half-assed commitment people that we have in this day and age that have empty relationships because they can't commit to anything. Commitment has a reputation problem. Too often it's reduced to dramatic declarations of love, milestone anniversaries, social media, relationship status, and all of that is a load of crap. What it really comes down to is, do you have integrity? Are you the same person that you are when a person sees you, that when you're not around them? What kind of person are you? Do you actually make commitments where you recognize and realize things from the beginning all the way to the end? Can you commit to hard? Can you commit to difficult? Because if you can, it makes your life easier because you learn from those experiences. Psychologists who study long-term relationships tend to focus more on concrete signs of commitment. I can tell when I'm with a couple whether they're going to last or not based on their level of commitment to each other. People that invest in a partnership and are serious about wanting to get their relationship on track, that kind of therapy goes really quick. But if you're going to do marital therapy with two people that are just trying to be together, half the time they can't stand each other, half the time they're, with each other, or they're together for the kids. What a stupid thing to do. But that's what people do. So the deal is, if they're half-ass committed, you're going to get half-ass therapy because you guys can't even freaking make your mind up if you want to be together. If you made your mind up that you want to be together, now we can solve some problems. There's also signs of commitment. Because if you want to have a deeper relationship, this has got to be a serious thing that you have got to figure out your relationship with. Commitment. Providing affection. Affection serves as emotional reinsurance. If you're a stone tablet, if you're one of these asshole Pacific Northwest, Norwegian quiet people, you're not a very affectionate person. So don't expect deep relationships because you ain't going to get it. You got to step out of your little comfort zone and decide to be a human being and enjoying the adult life of physical touch, verbal warmth, gestures of tenderness, and gratitude towards other people. In long-term relationship, we tend to become more modest and habitual, like your partner placing a hand on your back while passing through the kitchen. Yet, despite your subtlety, they still carry important meaning. An I love you by touch is 10,000 times more powerful than the words I love you. Also, providing support. Committed partners become part of each other's coping system. They give each other emotional encouragement, practical help, comfort during stressful periods, including periods where I may have caused you stress. Also, maintaining integrity. Integrity creates relational safety. Honesty, reliability, loyalty, follow through all matter here. And here's the deal. If you want to be alone with Nurse Ratchet wiping your ass in a nursing home, don't have integrity. Because nobody's going to show up for you when you're alone and miserable. Nobody wants to be around you if you have no integrity. And when you're old and ugly and stinky and have problems and health issues, nobody wants to deal with you if you had no integrity in your life. So if you want to be alone in your older years, don't manage your integrity. If you want to be around other human beings and be attractive as a human being, have integrity. There's also this sharing companionship. Commitment thrives through shared experiences. Couples who spend as much quality time together as possible reinforce their emotional connection through routine interaction. And what's great about this part is it doesn't require big or expensive plans. Even a grocery shopping trip, can be a very powerful thing in a relationship. Even a Sunday morning breakfast can be a very powerful thing in a relationship. It's important to demonstrate companionship if you're going to have a deeper relationship. Making an effort to communicate. Healthy commitment demands active communication, especially during moments of tension and misunderstanding. This doesn't mean constant, deep conversation. Rather, it reflects the ability to stay engaged and remain emotionally reachable. We may not be agreeing right now on this thing, but I still care about you. I still love you, and I want us to solve this. Showing respect. What is respect? Well, in a relationship, respect is the willingness to hear, to listen. People who listen respect other people. Respect shapes the emotional climate of a relationship. It manifests as consideration, patience, the desire to understand you, attentiveness, emotional validation. You can often spot respect in moments of disagreement. Even during frustration, a committed partner will never treat the other with contempt or casual cruelty. You know, we can learn a lot by the Socratic method. So what is the Socratic method? If you go into, let's say, a class and the doctor's teaching the class, everybody read the book, they read the chapter they needed to read, now everybody's going to discuss it. What happens in a Socratic classroom is the doctor or professor will say, hey, before you tell me what your interpretation of the chapter we read, you have to tell me what the student prior to you communicated about that chapter. You have to summarize what the prior listener, the person you listened to, said. If you do that, then you have a right to talk about what you interpret came from that chapter. That's called the Socratic method. The respect of listening to each other, learning from each other. That is what you do in a relationship. You learn from each other. You also creating a relational future. One of the clearest signs of commitment involves future oriented thinking. I always say this, people that set vacations way far down the road are very smart because now we're going to have a vacation all the way until we get to the vacation in the back of our mind. We're going to be thinking about that vacation on and off all the way until we get to the vacation. That's a very, very important thing to have in a relationship. Planting the fact that we are serious enough about each other that we are willing to plan our future far, far ahead. Now people behave a lot better in future oriented commitments than they do in now oriented commitments. Working on relationship problems creates a deeper relationship. Conflict itself says very little about relationship quality. But what you have to understand is when you're in a committed relationship, all conflict is designed to make the relationship better because we are here to understand each other before we try to problem solve. You know, couples who laugh and smile together often recover from stress more effectively. A lighthearted inside joke after a difficult week can function almost like emotional repair work. Also, working on relationship problems together is a part of commitment. It's a part of a deeper relationship. Conflict itself says very little about a relationship quality because almost every close relationship will experience friction in its lifetime. And commitment is visible in a collaboration, problem solving relationship. Committed couples approach challenges with a team mentality as a participant, not as a victim. Many people in this day and age grab on to becoming a victim and they just embellish the hell out of being a victim in every possible circumstance. And those people will suck your soul out of your body. Victim oriented people are horrible, horrible people to have a deeper connection to. If if you're around victim oriented people, you need to run for the freaking border. If you're married to a victim oriented person, you need to challenge them and say, hey, we're married. You're not a victim. I'm not a victim. Stop communicating like a victim and start making I statements. What did I do? How did I do this? What am I contributing to the problem? What am I inviting? Take some accountability. And the second part of it, become a participant. It's much like people on a team. You play your part, but you stop looking for fairness and justice because there isn't going to be. That's not what life's about. Life doesn't offer you fairness and justice. Life offers you problems. Life offers you opportunities. Life offers you issues. Life offers you experiences. That's about it. But none of it is calculated as fairness. Human beings are not fair, so forget looking for it. Also, if you want a deeper relationship, you have to express your commitment deeply and directly and consistently. Commitment sounds exactly like commitment. Partners who openly communicate dedication through reassurance, verbal affirmation, explicit statements about the relationship's importance create greater emotional security. These things matter. Like, I'm here for the long haul. We'll figure this out. You matter to me deeply. These are very strong commitment oriented statements. But what you have to understand if you're married to a woman, she wants to be cherished. Well, what is that? I can't be the man I am without her. I don't even know why she's with me. I'm lucky to have her. She's my best friend. It's that way when I'm with her. It's that way when I'm not with her. If you cannot cherish your wife, especially after she wrecks her body over and over at the beginning stage of your marriage for your turdly self, and then you go off and work and do your stupid thing and play your golf and go on your vacations with your buddies and do all that crap and leave her behind, you're an idiot. If you can't cherish your wife, you have no business being married. If you're cherishing your golf game, your best friend, your car, your job, you have no business being married. It's that simple. The bottom line is a woman needs to feel cherished, a man needs to feel respect. If you want to have a deeper relationship with each other, you got to do the cherish, and the women have to do the respect. What is respect? Listening. Does that mean agreement? No. What it means is, okay, I know what to buy this turd when I go to the grocery store. I don't like what he likes, but I'll buy it because I know he likes that. That's about it. That's called respect. Hearing and understanding your partner. If a man feels understood, he feels like a man. If a woman feels cherished, she feels like a woman. That's how you do it, guys. That's 30,000 feet. If you can get that one right, you can get a whole lot of things solved. One of the most useful ways to identify commitment is to observe your partner's consistency in ordinary moments. Grand gestures like expensive gifts, lavish dates can feel emotionally powerful, but they're not the most important thing you do. It's showing up, it's being there, it's caring. It's not, oh, we went on a date last Saturday night. Now you're saying this to me? Wow, just no appreciation whatsoever. That's because you have to make appointments to be a nice person. Really sad. Someone who can easily plan an extravagant anniversary weekend, but they can also be emotionally unavailable in everyday stress, is not a person you're going to go close to. Another partner may occasionally organize romantic getaways, also consistently check in, follow through on promises, remember important details, approach conflict with care. That is called maturity. It's if you're going to have a strong relationship, you've got to be involved. You've got to be engaged and you've got to care about the other person and not try to change them. Try to understand them. All right, we're going to take another break and we're going to come right back and talk more about deeper human connections. So come back. Welcome back, everybody. All right, we're talking about deeper human connections. Relationships usually suffer in silence before they collapse. In many cases, the beginning of the end is the gradual absence of the very behaviors identified: less affection, weaker communication, reduced support, diminished respect, fewer collaborative repair attempts. This diminishes a relationship to the point that you become incompatible. Now, many compatible people become incompatible because they're jerks. They don't respect each other. They don't collaborate. They're not committed. They have reduced support. They have weak communication. They have less affection, and they blame it all on their partner. They themselves don't look at themselves and go, what the hell am I doing? They're just too busy telling you how bad their partner is because they're a poor little victim. The absence of future oriented thinking also tends to destabilize relationships. When people stop imagining their future together, the relationship begins to feel temporary and uncertain. This is because we tend to cope with hardship more effectively when we perceive continuity and shared direction. It's really sad, but a lot of people, when they're in heavy conflict, will start breeding to create a child when they're in the worst possible connection, and they think that's going to save their marriage. That will not save your marriage. What I'm talking about is commitment, like, let's do this next week. Let's do this next month. Let's go to this place in a year. Let's do this financially for ourselves. Let's learn to figure out how to buy this particular kind of house. These are very important things to talk about, not to breed and have children. Because 50% of the people out there that are parents are breeding stock, especially in this day and age with Gen Z. These people are horrible. The absence of signs rarely stems from single villainous partner. They don't disappear overnight. More often, stress, burnout, unresolved resentment, depression, poor conflict habits, major life transitions are weaken relational maintenance behaviors. That's why it is important to understand commitment, because with full commitment, you both will work to solve the problems. Relationships function much like physical health in this sense. Bad habits will accumulate, but also good ones accumulate. Even a tiny gesture matters, so it's always worth the effort. The key to building high quality connections is to be mindful that everyday practices can make large differences in creating interactions that build strength and capabilities for people and groups overall. And there's strategies that are very important that build and make a relationship connected. The most attractive feature about any human being is the person who shows gratitude. Gratitude is the most attractive feature of any human being on the planet because they look for the good in others. It is amazing to hear gratitude. Gratitude is heard so little that people starve for it. And if you are an individual that radiates gratitude, you're a person that people draw to. You're a person that people want to invest in. You're a person people want to have around, even if it costs them money. You also want to enhance relationships by expressing gratitude, which supports positive relationships to flourish. And if you don't show gratitude to your partner that you're married to, don't expect to have a great relationship. You also want to boost joy and deeper connections by being thankful for others' impact on your life. You want to share that to strengthen the bonds. Recognize and appreciate unique qualities and abilities of other people. Encourage and reinforce positive attributes. You want to give, positive relationships by responding with enthusiasm and validation to good news for someone else. You also want to increase intimacy, trust, and relationship satisfaction by actively engaging and asking open-ended questions. Actively celebrating and explore positive experiences with other people is a key component to drawing people closer to you. Kindness in relationships, like acts of kindness, whether large or small, connects with people on a deeper level. Kindness creates ripple effects. It encourages a more supportive community. And if you engage in acts of kindness to foster community connection, what you want to do, you can create like moments where we engage and play with each other and laugh. Playful activities foster connection, communication, positive emotions. Demonstrating vulnerability through play creates safety and support in friendships. And if you incorporate playful moments and interactions, you will have collaboration and joyful environments. This is a wonderful thing to have in your life. There's reports out there that show between 10 and 15% of women and 20 to 25% of men are unfaithful to a partner at some point, but I would suggest that the statistic is much like 65 to 85% of people are thinking about what it would be like to be with someone else. And they're staring at pornography, or they're staring at other people, or they're daydreaming about sex with someone else. This happens all day long, every day. Why? Because they cannot fill their heart with their partner. They want to fill their heart with what they want. And if you're not a person that can share with other people and fixate on helping your partner and putting them first, you are going to be detached in a relationship. It's really understanding to understand why people think of other people when they're in a relationship, sexually or intimately. The deal is oftentimes they just want to feel special. They want to feel important. There's this thing called a love language. And if you want to have a deeper connection, you really, really need to understand Gary Chapman's 5 love languages. Love languages are a way to a person's heart. They are a unique need that a individual has. And if you are in a relationship and do not understand what your partner needs to feel loved, you are failing enormously. If you keep trying to give them what you need to feel loved, you're an idiot. So if you're sitting around giving your partner gifts because that's your love language, you're an idiot because you don't understand how to love. You need to love them the way they need to be loved. Now, that one might be words of affirmation. That might be spending time together. That might be intimacy. You know, it's really important to understand how to connect with your partner in a way that makes them feel loved. The question you want to ask your partner is, what is it that I have done that made you feel the deepest love? And if they tell you that, what that connects to is what you need to do to show them love. That is what you need to get really good at. And if you say, oh, I'm terrible at words of affirmation, you are a child. There is no reason in this earth for you to be committed to a marriage or a relationship and not know your partner's love language and not get good at it. If you're going to try to get in their pants and do all this life connection and do all this kids and house and all this other crap, then you sure as hell better invest in their love language. But all the narcissists today don't think about what another person needs. All they think about is what they want. And that's the day and age we live in because we have half of our population as liberal Democrats. You know, societal messaging about love and relationships sets couples up for emotional fall. If they don't understand what ebbs and flows in a relationship, you know, the Disney romance package is basically what people want. You know what you don't want is the Disney romance package. What you really want is a life partner, is a friend, is somebody who deeply cares about you and you deeply care about them. And you find it more joyful to give to them what they love than giving to yourself. Now, if you can be that kind of person, that is a great way to form deeper relationships. Does that mean you become codependent? No. But the joy in understanding what another person needs when they need it is a very powerful thing. You know, it's really understanding that the foundation of human interactions plays a pivotal role in your personal health. It shapes our emotional, social, psychological well being, but it also forms our body's health. If you want to destroy your body, if you want to have lots of pain and lots of stress, have unhealthy relationships in your life. You know, interpersonal relations refer to the complex, multifaceted interactions between people. These relationships vary. You know, there's a whole lot of psychological theories that have developed a comprehensive dynamics of interpersonal relations. There's this thing called the social exchange theory. This theory proposes that people engage in relationships based on cost benefit analysis. People strive to maximize rewards and minimize costs in their interactions with other people. And that emphasizes the importance of reciprocity and fairness in fostering healthy relationships. Then there's attachment theory that we've talked about earlier. There's also the quality and nature of interpersonal relationships. Communication. Guys, this is the biggest. Communication. You have got to be caring and you've got to be empathetic in your communication. That means you have to care about how another person feels and how another person thinks, and you have to have the desire to understand them without trying to correct them with your own stupidity. Also, trust. You can love someone and not trust them, but when you trust someone, the love grows. So the deal is, if I trust somebody and I haven't seen them in 5 years, when I get back together with that person, the relationship's going to take off like a rocket. The binder of every relationship that makes a relationship strong is the ability to trust each other. Now, in marriage, oftentimes you're not going to trust each other. And sometimes in relationships with friends, you're not going to trust each other. So, how do you get trust back? Well, it's pretty simple. Look, I know I violated my trust with you. I don't expect you to ever trust me again. But what I do need you to do is to have faith in me that I do want to solve this problem. I am asking you to have faith in me. I don't expect you to trust me, but I'm asking you to have faith in me so that we can resolve this. And you can judge based on my actions and what you observe whether or not you're going to trust me or not. I can't control that. It's up to you. However, I need you to have faith in me. So faith is the bridge to trust. And if you want to have deeper relationships, you've got to understand that concept. Self-disclosure is huge. Openness and vulnerability play a key role in deepening connections. People that share experiences and emotions with each other, this is a very powerful thing. The other thing that can cause a deeper connection is cultural and social norms. Many cultural backgrounds and social norms can significantly impact how people interact and express emotions in relationships. What you also have to understand is when it comes to communication, well, communication is 70% nonverbal. So, what that means is the nonverbal communication is much more important than your verbal communication. So what you want to understand is that how you connect with the person physically can also determine how you connect with the person verbally. If you want to have a deeper relationship, you've got to have good nonverbal communication with another person. All right, that's our show. I want to thank everybody for listening. I love hearing from you. You can do that on our webpage, voiceamericamedia.com or libsyn.com, libsyn.com, Dr. Gary Bell's Absurd Psychology. Now remember, these days, relationships start with like being pressed on a photo. Also, love is like war. Very easy to start and very hard to end. And for a man, your salary is based on whatever is left when your wife